September 18th, 2012. A day that a lot of us didn't think much of at the time, but little did we know, one of the most important games of the 2010s was about to release. Borderlands 2. Well, here we are now, approaching 11 years since it released. Players from the newer titles have been going back to the older games to catch up on what they've missed, so because of the little resurgence in Borderlands 2, it made me wonder, will Borderlands 2 survive the next 10 years? While it's already stood the test of time, lasting a solid decade, it's really hard to say where the game is going to go. And since this isn't the easiest question to give a straight yes or no answer to, we're going to look at the statistics of players on Borderlands 2 as well as my take on the question. So after my initial discussion with you, we are going to break down the numbers. But the first thing I want to get off my chest is that this is my favorite game ever. And I wouldn't be asking the question, is it going to survive the next 10 years if I didn't give a damn about it? And I'm sure a lot of you have that same sentiment. Why else would you have clicked on this video? So first off, I want to list a couple things that I really like about the game and one that we may have to worry about. The first topic that I want to discuss here on things that I love about Borderlands 2 is the replay value. The simplest way to put it is something different happens to you every single time you launch this game, whether you're getting on a new character that you just started, one you just started yesterday, one you just started a week ago, one you started 5 years ago that you're still playing, one that you started, hell, when you fucking first played the game. Who cares? Whatever it is, you launch a character, something different is going to happen to you than previously. And I'm going to briefly go over some of these because most of you are going to either one, just agree with me, or two, you already know this information, and I'm just further implying why this game is so legendary. The next one I want to talk about is the multiplayer. The versatile nature of multiplayer is insane. You can have a party of 4, and if you wanted, everyone could play the same class. Or you could play 4 completely different characters. With your different classes in the game, you have so much versatility. With Maya being an incredible medic, Salvador being your tank, Gage being a broken mess, Krieg being a freak of nature, and a melee monster. By far one of my favorite games to play online. And a side note is that the multiplayer is basically a bonus feature, as you can play it just as well by yourself as you can with friends. And on to our next bullet point, the community. The community continues to thrive and survive, even though some of us have experienced a lot of this game over a decade ago. There are still new things being discovered about the game, even after all these years. Even some of us are experiencing things that we didn't even know were in the game, myself included. Did you know that in the mission, sorry, I had a brain fart there for a minute. In the mission, the name game, at the end of that mission, it will turn the bullymongs into boner farts. Obviously, everyone remembers that. But for whatever reason, I just barely realized here in 2023 that they call the monglets boner toots. And I actually got my reaction to that in a video that I put up just a few weeks ago, so please go check that out. It was the second episode of that absolutely hilarious playthrough we're doing with, a little special guest of mine. But the final positive about Borderlands 2 I want to mention before I just continue to go on an endless tear about how great this game is the timeless graphics. The cel-shaded graphics are beautiful, making it look like a comic book come to life. It's best described as like a Telltale's game, which is why I think that lended itself so perfectly when Telltale's ended up making some Borderlands games. Still in the middle of playing through the first Tales game, by the way, and I'm really enjoying it. And if you remember, I said earlier there's one thing that we may have to worry about, and unfortunately, that is the age of the game. Sadly, the only thing I can see being the death of the game is simply how old it is. As much as it pains me to say, how long can we do the same things over and over again? A remaster or update would need to implement the modernized movements in the game as well as all the different quality of life features that we've seen added over the years. Just simply to get the engagement in the players up again, as a lot of us are probably beginning to wear a little stale of Borderlands 2 by now. And even if you're not like myself, because I'm still enjoying the game plenty fine, you do have to admit at some point it's not like it once was. Even though a lot of us still find new and interesting ways to play, that sentiment does not hold true for everyone. I could rant about this game for another 45 minutes if I wanted to, which is why I actually plan to do a full-on review on Borderlands 2 one day, just to tell the audience some more on how fucking amazing this game is another day. Alright, let's talk about the numbers. So the only public stats in terms of player counts that we have access to online are the Steam charts. So let's just dive straight into it. So you go all the way back to September 2012, they had a solid 60,000 players online. It dropped all the way down to about 30,000 by the second month, which is pretty usual with new games. You'll always see a bunch of people try it out and then quit by the second month. And what can you really do? Keep in mind the numbers that I'm talking about are the average players online. There was actually 123,000 that hopped on just Steam alone to play Borderlands 2, with an additional 68,000 that played the second month. But I'm going to be focusing on the average players, as it's going to further help us answer our question at the end of this video. After the first year of launch, they consistently held about 10 to 15,000 players all the way up until around 2016. And sure, some months you had some dips, like some 7,000 and 6,000 months for the average player, but 2014 and 15 were like the transitional years for Borderlands 2, where it became a game that was releasing content pretty much consistently to becoming just a cult classic that only the true fans were still playing. And when I say true fans, I mean just people who genuinely love the game. And if I'm not mistaken, the Son of Cromarak's DLC was the last real DLC for Borderlands 2. I'm not talking about Commander Lilith's DLC just yet. We'll get to that in a minute. Of the main run that Borderlands 2 had, the Son of Cromarak's DLC was the last Headhunter pack that released, and that was in April of 2014. I just looked it up to confirm. And the fact that it was able to still hold about 10,000 players 2 years after the fact consistently is really impressive. And now I'm going to focus on Commander Lilith's Fight for Sanctuary DLC, as it was the final release for Borderlands 2 as content. It was put out June 9th of 2019, and let's go here on the Steam charts to check out how the game was doing in June of 2019. Holy shit, wouldn't you know it? An average of 34, almost 35,000 players, which is the highest average player count since the game's second month of launch. 80,000 people hopped on just the Steam version alone just to check out this final DLC. And sure, it was a marketing tactic to kind of help Borderlands 3. It was kind of supposed to tie in what was going on in between those games. But Borderlands 2 is a big contributor to what pushed that machine and made that such a big move for them. Why do you think they didn't add this into the pre-sequel? Well, yeah, I guess that wouldn't have made sense because the pre-sequel's before Borderlands 2, but you get my point. And in the following months, they had about 20,000, 12,000, and then 10,000, and it slowly kind of fizzled back to normal from there. The last bit of stats that I want to talk about are from June 2022 all the way up until the end of the year in December 2022. While it may not have seemed like it at the time, this was the darkest period for Borderlands 2. The fewest amount of players hopped online last year. And while 2023 we've seen a slight increase since January, you could see this year hasn't exactly been graceful to the game either. While it has been up from last year, we have seen a little bit of decreases here and there. Back in May, you can see the peak was down about 300 players. But then in July, we bumped up like an extra 500. And if you look over here to the far right, that is the amount of players who did hop online. You got about 4,000 to 5,000 players that are hopping on each month. All right, so with all that being said, think about the peak for that final DLC for a moment. I want to focus on that a little bit more, as they were able to get as many people online as they were for the second month the game was out. Almost 7 years after launch. If that doesn't show how strong this fucking community is, I don't know what does. Sad to see how the numbers were in 2022, and I can't imagine consoles were much better, as console gaming is just kind of fading away slowly, with the current gen being a disaster on so many different levels. And even though you can find the new consoles now, they're really not that much different from the previous gen, mixed in with physical games just becoming more and more relevant. I don't see the console numbers mattering that much in the long haul. Not saying that you all that play on console don't matter. It's just that at this point, PC is the most active platform for gaming, as well as consoles just becoming less popular in general. I still think that physical games are important though. As myself, I own like 3 other copies of Borderlands 2, as well as a digital copy on my Microsoft account. Not to mention my Steam version either. Used to also have the Handsome Collection on disc for Xbox One, but I decided to give it to a buddy a few years ago in hopes that he'd try it out. More specifically Borderlands 2. I really just wanted to see what his reaction was to the game, maybe try and play it with him. Plus I already had the Handsome Collection digitally, so there was really no need in me keeping the disc. And just here recently, he came over and I was having a nice little chat with him, right? And I decided to bring up the Handsome Collection for whatever reason. I hadn't even mentioned it in years. And he just replies with a And I think you all know what that means. He still hasn't opened the case to the game, let alone took the disc out and put it in the console. Simply put, the idea of playing games from over a decade ago just simply isn't appealing for someone jumping in for the first time. While for me and you, we're enthralled to hop on Borderlands 2 again, excited to start up our next character with our friends. Or as I said, some of you may have just recently hopped in and you're enjoying it that way, that's fine as well. But if you are one of those people, you're lucky, as with today's short attention span audience, it's very difficult to get someone who's never played any of the games before to just jump in. I think even for the few that can get through, you've got such a long road ahead before your max level. Toss in the intense learning curve this game has, especially in the late game, and it's quite daunting for a new player, unlike it is to us who have played it for years. It's just normal, right? Well, if the game was able to pull over 30,000 players over 7 years after the game came out, I can only imagine what a Borderlands 2 Remastered Edition would do. Bare minimum, if done right, they can make this happen, and while some may say that they should work harder on the next mainline game instead of a remake, we don't know how that's going to turn out, and let's be honest, it's the era of remakes right now, and if they don't strike while the iron's hot, or at least somewhat warm, then Borderlands 2 will forever wrinkle, literally and figuratively. The player count will slowly decrease until there's hardly anyone playing, and Gearbox will eventually shut off the Shift servers. While there are no signs of that happening anytime soon, there has been very recent multiplayer issues that were brought to my attention over on the Reddit for the game, where players are being banned for joining their friends. It's just a temporary ban, but still. On Steam, you may get banned from playing Borderlands 2 for just joining your friends. I don't think I need to tell you why that's a problem. As far as I know, the other console servers may be affected as well, but I am not for sure, which hurts the game in the way that you can't do multiplayer. You can't even play with your friends. It's just another reason we need a remaster. 2 weeks ago, I threw up a video on if Borderlands 4 will save the franchise. And while the general reaction was great, most of you agreed with my statements in that video. Some of you asked, does the franchise really need saving? Well, let's look at where we're at. Remember how I said Borderlands 2 was looking pretty rough back in 2022? Well, other than the first 2 months that Wonderlands was out on Steam, it completely got squashed by Borderlands 2 for the rest of the year, as Borderlands 2's average players was more than Wonderlands all the way from 2022, like I said, excluding the first 2 months the game was on Steam, all the way up until current time. So to those of you who were asking that question, let's look at where we're at. Like I said, Wonderlands hasn't even finished releasing all of its content yet, and all the players, all the creators, you name anybody, none of them are still playing your newest release. And I hate to bring monthly player counts into the equation again, but tell me why an average of not even 2,000 players are playing the game. And it's barely even been on Steam over a year. Tell me why more players are going back to Borderlands 2, a game that's about to celebrate its 11-year anniversary. And for whatever reason, it has more players than Wonderlands. A game that released 10 years after it. We're talking 2012 compared to 2022. And somehow your 2012 property is doing better than your 2022 release. I know a lot of you are probably wondering why. Well, I can give you 3 reasons right here, right now. And before I jump straight into the reasons why Wonderlands and the third game haven't kept fans entertained, I need to say that Borderlands 2 is my favorite game of all time, like I said earlier, and I genuinely worry and care about its future. While the community is strong, how long can we be the only ones pushing it forward? It's a thought that I had the other day, and that's where I got the question for today's video. Now let's hop into our bullet points. Remember, I'm talking about Wonderlands here. Well, for sure, the game isn't as good as previous titles. Honestly, I didn't think it was that much of a downgrade from BL3. But then again, I'm not clamoring to go back and play either one. Compared to the first 3 releases in the mainline series, they are just disappointing messes that overall left a sour taste in just about every fan's mouth. Even if you're one of the people who enjoy the game today, you can't deny that. Second bullet point is the lack of motivation and disregarding what the fans want. For innovation, other than spicing up combat, adding spells and mergeable classes in Wonderlands, few quality of life features that we all kind of expected, but to be honest, there's nothing new. Nothing. Oh yeah, and disregarding any fan output at all. Pre-sequel, Borderlands 3, Wonderlands. Where the fuck are pearls? Enough said. And for my final bullet point, it kind of ties back into the last two. The franchise isn't as popular as it used to be. Now, the reason I listed this for the end is not only does it tie back to those last two, but the franchise as a whole has struggled to maintain any mainstream media for longer than a fart in the wind, simply because of the first two bullet points that I just mentioned. While the IP isn't dead, it's not the precious diamond in the rough like it used to be. It's a smudged ruby that needs to be shined up a little. And what better way to do that than to give us what we want? If Gearbox wants to win us back over, and although I think plenty of people will pull up to purchase Borderlands 4, don't you think a remaster of your most popular game would be a nice way to get the fans back on your side? No matter what, a remaster of Borderlands 2 would make gaming headlines. Think about all the remasters that have set the world on fire lately. People are still raving about Resident Evil, so for the love of the Lord, just give us remastered BL2. Because ever since I've begun to cover Borderlands news, I now have to read comments about how terrible the last couple entries have been. And while yeah, I do agree with you for the most part, it just sucks, and it comes down to that the fans see the greed and arrogance of Gearbox. What I mean is how I said earlier, the fans get the cold shoulder while Gearbox grabs the udders of the cow and continues to milk every drop of milk out of that cow until it has no juice left in the tank. Unfortunately, the biggest cow for Gearbox has been the Borderlands franchise. And as it is, that looks like the route we're headed. But I'd still like to remain optimistic for Borderlands 4. As for the remaster of Borderlands 2, the odds of it happening in my eyes are slim right now. There is a rumored Borderlands collection that is apparently in Gearbox's pipeline that I figured was worth mentioning. While immediately you're probably like me getting excited thinking, oh what, they're going to remaster those first couple games, right? Well, unfortunately, it looks like yet another cash grab. It looks like we're just going to be getting another re-release of Borderlands 1, 2, the pre-sequel, and Borderlands 3. There's a possibility Wonderlands could be included here, but I doubt it, as it's not a part of the main storyline. I really doubt they've had enough time to remake Borderlands 1, the pre-sequel, and 2. Seriously, it hasn't been that long since Wonderlands released, and they're still currently working on Wonderlands content. Do you guys really think they have time to work on 3 remasters? I highly doubt it, but damn it, do I hope I'm wrong. Problem is, if I look at the picture, with just an ounce of logic, especially with Gearbox's track record, we're getting a bundle of re-releases, my friends. Probably to release alongside the movie, or maybe potentially Borderlands 4, which I think would probably be the best move. If they are the remasters, if they're the re-releases, I really don't give a damn. I already own all those games. As I look at it, we the fans have been flipped the bird by Gearbox yet again, as the odds for any remastered Borderlands games are about 80-20 right now. 80% chance of the Pandora's Box bundle just being a re-release of the games we already own. But the reason I went on this tangent about the bundle and the current state of Borderlands as a whole was because without change, without anything new, the future of Borderlands 2 looks very bleak in my opinion. While I don't think it'll ever just completely disappear from people's mind, there's always going to be a cult following for this game. Even if the shift servers are shut down, fans would set up dedicated servers to play together. I'm almost sure of it. And it's just, I don't want to see that happen. I'd rather see them try to keep it alive for everyone who thought we were going to hear about the remaster of Borderlands 2 on the 10-year anniversary back in 2022. Here we are now, almost a year later, coming up on 11, and what do we have? A new Wonderlands DLC coming out. Yay. So, if you're asking me, will Borderlands 2 survive the next 10 years? No matter what happens, remaster or not, in some way, yes, Borderlands 2 will survive. I just really don't want to see it become a zombie version of its former self. And to be honest, I think I will still be going back to the game in some way or another in 10 years. That is, if I live that long. I'm only 20 now, so fingers crossed on that one. Then it comes down to what do you call surviving as what would be a 21-year-old game by then? Well, as long as the player count hasn't completely plummeted to the point where only a few hundred people are playing, I think it will survive until 2033. Is that a bold prediction? Yeah, probably. But look where we've already got this game. Here we are now, talking about the next 10 years of it. Why? Because it's that damn legendary. It shows how much that this question matters to us. In Gearbox, if anyone employed there may stumble across this video, it's because we care. And listen to me when I say this. Care as much as we do, and this game will live forever. That's really all I've got for you guys today. I hope y'all did enjoy today's video. If you guys did, make sure to smash a like on it and subscribe if you guys are new. I'm making new Borderlands videos every single Friday and Sunday with occasional videos thrown up in the week, as well as new polls and posts posted over on my community tab. So be looking out for those because I'm always posting polls on what new videos I have planned, and you guys get to actually decide what videos you would like to see. If you would like to hear me talk more about the Borderlands 2 remaster, please smash a like on it and comment down below what you guys want to hear me delve deep into, as I think this was an important question with the way Borderlands is sitting right now. I know how important this game is to a lot of you, just like it is to me, and I've got my fingers crossed that it can survive as long as it can. And keep in mind that without you there is no me, and without you there is no Borderlands, and that is the message that I want you to leave with today. We're all special and we all make what this community is, and for that I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate all of you for watching this video to the end. I don't really have much more to say. I love you all to death, and I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend, and with that I will see you all in the next one.